All right, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? Seamus here and Marcos. We got another great episode in the mix. I want to introduce Sean Ferguson, guys. First and foremost, life is serendipitous. Marcos always say that. I met Sean, little intro here, just at Hyrox in May earlier this year, 4 months ago. 4 to 5 months ago in May, Desiree and I did a Hyrox, met him in the parking lot, and just got to say hi. And then at some point, we just connected on the social media, and then he and I have been running together on Sundays. And this is the perfect cue for relationships and connection. I don't think you get to know somebody truly until you've struggled with them deeply. And the first time that Sean and I really got to hang out was we ran 9 miles together, and then we just recently not ran like 11 miles of like in pure heat because it's been so hot in LA. So it's been crazy. But about Sean, what I love about Sean, guys, is super awesome guy. Like same mission of coaching, serving folks in the health and wellness space as a personal trainer for a long time, and then also being a Hyrox pro and going into the elite, but basically like the top guys in the world. We want to talk about that today, and then basically his health and wellness journey of how he got to where he's at. It's been so great to get to know him. So I just really want to push him on the pod and have him meet Marcus as well. But Sean, thank you so much for being here, man.
Absolutely. It's an honor, and I really appreciate you guys having me. Yeah. I think it's really cool how things do come into play the way they did. Because when my girlfriend and I were showing up to the event at Hyrox, we were waiting for her sister, and she was late, and I'm kind of, all right, a little antsy, like we got to get in there. It's my girlfriend's first event. So I'm like, okay, got to make sure she gets time to warm up, see the space. Cause I've done it a few times myself. And it was serendipitous because she showed up late. And then after we started walking to the elevator, we saw you and Desiree, and we just started chatting. And then it was later on, I think in the warm-up area, I was like, hey, it was really great to meet you earlier. Love to get your Instagram and connect. Because we had some stuff we were talking about as far as fitness, and then there you have it. So that's pretty cool.
There you have it.
Yep. Yeah. And then when you reached out about the run, because you were looking for someone to do long runs with, and I've been training for marathons since 2020, and it happens that in my Hyrox and marathon training right now, long runs on Sundays, the mileage worked out, and so that was really cool.
Yeah. No, dude, it was perfect. It was perfect. Sean, I know we have a big dossier and stuff like that, but tell the audience here real quick a little bit of your background and how you got into the space of fitness and what you're technically doing now. Like it's a bit of a story, but like that elevator kind of pitch of what got you in there.
Yeah. So I'll try to summarize this as quickly as possible, or as distinctly. Fitness came into my life at 13 years old. I had a basketball coach. He ran the varsity basketball team, who was also a PE teacher at junior high. And he ran this really unique classroom called conditioning. And it was for 7th and 8th graders who met Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the entire school year. And he started with motivational talk, so to speak. We had binders, we took notes. He handed out pamphlets talking about like Jim Brown or Green Berets. And we're just absorbing this knowledge as teenagers. And then 30 minutes later, we would get into kind of a boot camp style workout. And he would run us outside and inside in the gym, doing all sorts of different calisthenics. And then there was a universal gym, one of those old school, like metal lat pull down seated row. And so that was my introduction to fitness at 13. And I've never looked back since. Got involved in sports, played in high school, never collegiately, basketball, baseball, soccer. And then weightlifting carried through when I went to college, when I was struggling to find work and figure out what I wanted to do in my early 20s, living in Seattle. And I was a member at this gym downtown in Seattle. And the head trainer there, very polished guy, always busy, huge binder full of all his clients' information, just a very by the book guy, this guy, Dan, who I still really look up to. he and I started getting to know each other, and he's like, man, he's like, what do you do for a living? And I was like, honestly, I have this construction job, and I'm waiting tables and trying to figure out my next move if I want to go back to school. And he said, have you ever thought about being a personal trainer? And I was like, I kind of have, but I don't know. I usually, when I go into something, I really want to commit, and I just haven't given it much thought. He's like, you're always talking to the members, and you obviously know what you're doing in here, just getting the educational piece, maybe that's the third thing. Why don't you come in, you shadow me, and we'll get you started. We'll get you this, entry level certification. I said, all right. And that was it. That was history. That was 2007. And I've been a personal trainer ever since. So I started at that gym, quickly worked my way up into like management, even worked for like David Barton Gym in Seattle, and then 24 Hour Fitness. And then in 2013 is when I decided to go solo. So I've been an entrepreneur since then in terms of the fitness space, and have just focused primarily on the in-person training element. I had opportunities to do, ownership with some brick and mortars or to start some gyms, and I turned them down. I just really love working with the person one-to-one. And then that's when my personal journey really took off, as far as my mental health journey, spiritual journey, and digestive health journey, kind of all at one time. So I was in counseling, working with a counselor. I'd gone through a divorce, and just things were just really challenging at that time for me personally. Trying to find myself and understand, from a mental health aspect, like, what's going on with these challenging feelings, and, why am I operating and thinking in certain ways, and, trying to understand like self-care, happiness, especially as a man. I just felt like I didn't have a lot of resources. And so it was actually an ex-girlfriend who introduced me to her therapist, and Derek and I, it was very synchronistic right away. And Derek, I owe him a lot as far as establishing my mental health journey. And I learned so much about myself in that 4 years. And then I ended up joining like a men's group, to kind of go along with that, which really enhanced my spiritual growth. So I started realizing there was a lot of parallels with physical health and mental health. And I didn't really pay much attention to nutrition until I really needed to. And so I did some bodybuilding in 2012, went with a very strict diet, won a competition, and kind of just said, okay, that's enough for me. I'm not trying to go pro in bodybuilding. I'm good. But coming out of that, nutritionally was a nightmare. And I would experience a whole host of health issues, from bloating and distension that was chronic in my stomach. It wasn't body fat. I could tell, I could still see a six pack, but my stomach was sticking out all the time. So I was really frustrating. Brain fog, low energy. And luckily in Seattle, I knew a lot of health and wellness practitioners who, like naturopaths, who were having me come into their office, and we were doing a battery of tests and nothing was coming up. So leaky gut ended up being kind of the diagnosis. It was a loose term that just said there's some permeability going on in your small intestine, and a lot of stuff isn't being broken down properly. And that's where we need to start. So went on that journey as well. So the reason I bring up that area, along with like the mental health, spiritual health growth, is I've gone from personal trainer to fitness lifestyle coach and consultant, where transformation and behavior change and learning how to improve, I guess, your overall well-being through movement and what I call the inward journey, understanding that is so much a part of not only the success in your fitness journey, but the longevity, and seeing fitness in your life, not just for goals, seeing it for something much bigger. And yeah, so it's been amazing. So that's kind of where I'm at today, where I'm a hybrid athlete. So I enjoy running as much as I do lifting, strength training. And then I have a big passion for helping men over 40 either restart their health and fitness journey or redefine it.
Oh man. Well, I mean, where to dive into the segue from the like you said, kind of those pivotal points. Like, do we want to go down the mental rabbit hole, mental health thing today? Do we want to go down the gut stuff and overcoming that and the protocol and how, the more modern approaches of it, right? The dysbiosis of the gut and the intestinal permeability, as it's so called now, versus the leaky gut, as it was called, a decade ago, when people were proclaiming that there's these issues, only to now figure out, like, yeah, the gut lining can actually create some permeability and stuff can pass through where it's not supposed to go. I mean, Seamus, since we're now officially board certified, I guess we should ask our guest here what he wants to do, because that's I think either one of those would be, or any of those things would be really interesting to kind of have our key and focus for today.
Or you go down one, but they're both so, Sean, they're both so instituted in each other that it hits two birds with one stone, right, Marcos?
I would imagine there's some. We all know that stress and cortisol can do some things with the gut, so maybe it does naturally go there anyway. But I guess, like, what was being fixed first in order to get both of them to, work together in simpatico, how they coalesce, so to speak. So I think for me, because, like, I never really get to utilize this skill set that, like, paid a lot of money for, which is the gut health stuff. Like, what was the protocol? What did they start with? And I'm kind of curious if, like, it aligns with the protocol that I kind of know of with helping this. Like, so I'll let you kind of maybe take it from there.
I want to think back to, I saw a minimum 3 naturopaths. They kept referring me because maybe they specialized in something the current one didn't. What they specialized in exactly, it doesn't, from memory, I can't remember. But when things just weren't coming up conclusive, I think that's what continued this investigation to then, for one naturopath to say, I'm going to have you go see this guy, Adam, because he specializes in XYZ. I would get similar information as far as causation and sometimes conflicting. It wasn't, I'll fast forward real quick because then I think this ties in. It wasn't until, I forget the term for it, and hope it's appropriate to talk about this. It's nothing crazy, but it's where basically they use water up the backside to help flush things out.
Enema?
But there's another term for it. I forget. It's like these facilities you can go to. It's
colonic.
Yes, maybe colonic. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was like last measure. I'll do whatever because nothing else was working. And I remember it was like my second time in, and the woman said, "Hey, I just am curious if you don't mind me asking, if you were to rate your level of stress on a scale of 1 to 10 on average on a daily basis, what would it be?" And I said, a 25. And she said, "Okay, got it." And it was that moment that I think actually helped me get to where I am today, to realize, she's like, I'm just going to say this right now without diving into the, all the nuances of this, but that's got to be the foundation of what's going on. Because when your body is constantly under that state, nothing can really fully repair, nothing can really balance. And I remember just starting to feel calmer as she was saying that, because it was almost like finally somebody handed me maybe some insights, even though I didn't like run out of there pure gut health feeling better. I thought, okay, there's something here, and I resonate with this. And anxiety and stress have always been a part of my story since as far back as I can remember as a child. So I thought, I need to take a look at this. So enter acupuncture, more massages, more. I upped my mental health counseling. I asked my therapist, what are some things I could start to do to relieve acute stress? And I never thought about it until that question. And little by little, things were improving. But just to quickly answer your question, elimination diets, a host of supplementation that today comes collaboratively in a pill versus like, oh, take slippery elm, take marshmallow extract. Yeah. And it was like all these, and berberine, because my stomach acid was low and they wanted to fire that up. It was like, okay, so the elimination diet was adding to the stress because I was now fearing food. I like putting an almond in my mouth like freaked me out. So it was bone broth. It was like egg yolks for 3 days. Then I can introduce, boiled chicken and boiled vegetables. It made me so hypersensitive about my own system because I was afraid of what was going to happen, that in and of itself brought up the anxiety. So
It's funny you mentioned that, because we had a patient that I saw a few years back that, like, the anxiety of food because there was some allergic reaction that happened or some sort of like diagnosis to whatever thing. I forget what it was. And I almost want to say it was Guillain-Barré or Guillain-Barré, which like he had an instance with that and like recovered from it. And then this is like the after effects, or maybe I'm getting confused and that was like his girlfriend. But nonetheless, like the story of like he would eat like a tomato and like bust out in hives. Like he would eat like literally single food ingredients and bust out in hives. And like the stress of like just eating food, like literally would like create like and manifest as like an actual outward physical symptom. And I mean, like it does sound bizarre to think that like stress can do that, but you're, like you said, like I was kind of interested, like you kind of hit the nail on the head though, like mentioning like, yes, I had this list of supplements, I had this elimination diet, which again, really is like kind of like the core of I think any like naturopathic or holistic version of getting down to like how to heal the gut. And now it is so convenient because like they have figured out a lot of, very good Ayurvedic type of like not medicines, but like, herbs and the secret blend of herbs and spices, so to speak, right? To like make this thing work really well. And you're mentioning all these things that again, back then was probably like very niche and hard to source. Right. But going through that now, I'm sure you have a little more respect for like seeing some of those things kind of pan out for other people. Right. Like, versus a lot of people, like even myself, like can kind of get there's a stigma behind utilizing some techniques like this to help your gut health. Right. And I'm like, at what point is that truly necessary? Like, is it that you're just so fixated and overwhelmed by food anxiety that you just need to like stick to something a little bit longer? Or, do you find a way to work in conjunction with like something that is along those lines? Cause it might kill, both, like it may actually get down to like the root cause issue, but also help you get down to like overcoming that anxiety feeling. So, the mind, I mean, you mentioned that, and you're like, my brain and my gut, the gut brain axis, right? Like, this thing that there's such a multitude of research going into that it fascinates me, but I'm also not one that like holds a ton of anxiety personally. So other people that do, like maybe you are more susceptible to gut issues. Well, ironically, is that a thing? Oh, you deal with the same things?
That's a thing, right, Marcos? Like, I mean, Sean's talking about, but like, what is it that people that we've learned from the HPA axis dysfunction, right? The cortisol, right? And all those things. But there is truth there because, the pituitary gland, whatever, all that stuff, and the adrenal cortexes. I mean, there's a lot, right? Like with the anxiety, the relationship with food, and food is so. Sean said this the other day. There's nothing like money or food that can be like loaded when you're working with patients, because like those are just two ingrained things that we deal with day to day.
Yeah. It's what's the word? Like the mind, like there's some people, wow, I mean, shoot, the husband of one of my clients right now, he's like looking for a diagnosis because he's convinced that he needs a diagnosis in order to get better versus trying to like just focus on things that would make him feel better. You know what I mean? Like, why is a diagnosis or something that points exactly to like the disease state really matter? And it's a fascinating thing. I think it's a fascinating, like, a, a human, I don't know, like a genetic fault, if I would say anything, right? Like, why do we want to place some sort of label on ourselves when that label, like, especially if it's like a bad one? Like, I don't want a bad label. But overcoming that, like you said, you went into this place, like thinking this is the last ditch effort, and the first thing that person asked you was like, what's going on in your stress life?
Yeah.
Making you do some inward thinking for sure. So you mentioned double down on like your sessions with your mental health professional. Obviously I think that's also a great place for people to start. I don't think enough people, men especially, right, like that's like your main cohort of people, right? Like, men have a hard time really like talking about their feelings and what's going on, and maybe they don't feel like as heard, or they don't want to mansplain shit, like you whatever it is. Like, the way you approach conversations are very different, I think, in modern times. And I'll just say this, like, out to be kind of frank, I think like our society is a little soft these days. There's a lot of people that are, some people that might want to say something, we don't say it, and it's like pent up, and then we have to go to that third party person to say it. You got to mind your P's and Q's a little bit more, because like everything is freaking offensive today. And it's like, I didn't intend that. Like, I actually have to like play the scenario. Like, I try to play out a whole scenario of things before I say it to my wife, like 3 times over. And I'm like,
And you still get it wrong, Marcos.
I still get it wrong. I still get it wrong. That is like, it has a stressor. Like, yeah, like the, cortisol, right? That pregnenolone steal, right? Like the downstream effects of everything else that plays a role that we literally can map out. Like, it's not like, I think everybody's probably seen this like image that they're like somewhat into fitness, where it has like the hormone pathways and things like that. And yet, like, when it happens to us, like, we just think that something else like is going on. Like, it's undiagnosable. It doesn't. There is no fix. And
what's that saying, Marcos? You could be feeling that feeling after being on an air bike for 10 seconds, pass out after a CrossFit class on the turf, just breathing your air, and you're like, my God, that was the best effing workout of my life. Flip it, you're in an airplane and you're having the same feelings, but it's a different meaning. Oh, this plane's gonna crash. It's the same. It's the same physiological feelings, but the meanings that we anchor to it are different in different situations, different environments, right? It's like such a weird, concept.
Oh yeah, I mean, I yeah, it's interesting that how evolutionary biology has led one thing to potentially be used for good and for bad, but then too much of it is like where you can then create bad. And and then we like high intensity stuff because it's like the best bang for the buck, but you don't want to be too intense all the time. But like, that's also how, like, I've also learned how to lose weight, and then you have to go through all these other kind of theoretical concepts and teach people, which boom, instead us. And I'm sure, like, does this play a role in, like, okay, I'm 2007, Sean, so you have 17 years of doing this, right? Like, what has changed in your arc after dealing with stuff yourself versus how you treated people back then versus how you're working with your men over 40 now? Like, what are some of the like key things that you've changed? And I think a lot of men that listen to this will maybe get a lot out of that.
Yeah, such a great question. I always have to know who I'm working with, and understand that man, woman, self-aware person or not, trust and connection takes time. And getting a person to, I think, ultimately just understand their why, but the why behind the what, as far as if it's to do with their goals or what got them to see me in the first place. I've always wanted to be a trainer or a coach or whatever label I get in this fitness industry, as somebody who says, and this is a cliche term thrown around a lot, but empowerment I know that when I've been taught things, it's easy for me to cling to that mentor or that book or that movie or that podcast and just feed off of that and not realize that it's actually trying to help me excel my journey. And I take that knowledge. I want to be a facilitator in the same way. So I think it went from what do I got to do to impress you to stay around to what do I got to do to get you to understand how amazing you are and that you're capable of doing this on your own. Yeah, like it's fun working out with people along our journey. It's fun inspiring others. Of course, the community aspect's always there, but if left to your own devices, my biggest piece of pride takeaway is that this person doesn't need to rely on anything external in order to keep their journey going. So it's a careful conversation that's kind of sprinkled in. Some people are like, feed me, like help me understand what you're trying to bring to the table. I don't tout myself as an expert because I've been led by incredible mentors who are wiser than I can ever imagine to be. But I try to lead by example as much as I can. This is what I learned when I faced something similar. This is what I went through too. I see you. I understand you just as much as you think that I may be on this upper level in terms of fitness. It never started that way. And I'm always learning. I'm always being a student of myself and trying to get better and try to improve, but at the same time, accepting my humanness in the moment and my imperfections. So I think it's a lot about the inward journey, but done in a way that makes sense for that arena.
No, I love that. I think I feel like I've gone through a similar path, similar journey. That's why I was like when I met Sean, I was like I feel like this guy and I had like similar upbringings.
Mm-hmm.
Marcos and I talk about it. Marcos literally said it on a car ride once. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're just the same person. You were just in LA. I was in Vegas. Like you were just had like the same similar things." But Sean, for you, when you work with people now, obviously you went from trainer to now doing some stuff, and I know you have like some online capacity stuff, whether that's like Hyrox or like the betterment method. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, tell us a bit about why with men, why certain group of men, 40 plus, what is it about that you feel your journey has gone to keep them accountable? You and I have had some conversations about this, like some real deep convos about this on our run. So I know where it can go, but whatever you feel like you can share in terms of like why you feel like that's been the calling for you.
I had a good business coach. I'm not going to claim this one. I give him credit. Ken, he, talked about the sense of rugged individualism that's pretty easy for, I think, young men to try to identify with, as far as I don't need help. I'm strong. I'm capable here. And I'm not saying that doesn't have its place in this world, being a provider, being a leader, but the humility to say, I don't understand this, or I need help, is in my journey in 43 years on this planet. That's, I know, very limited. I'm not a world traveler, so I've only met so many people in my life, but the ones that I have, there's some commonalities here with this idea that men have a hard time going inward. And so I certainly did. I had a lot of pain. That came out sideways for many years, and it came to a head, and enough was enough. And if there's anything I can do to help a guy where I meet him at a point where he's like, it's either now or never, that's something I'm extremely passionate about. I just had a phone call with somebody I went to high school with who was in my class, and we just had a quick rapport call because he liked one of my posts, and I just said, "Hey, Brian, it's great to see you, man. How's life?" And then one thing after there, we got on the phone call, and now he's going to be working with me, and he just shared some things that were under the surface. I was really appreciative of that, and that's when I light up, because I was one of those guys, and I entered men's groups, very, cross arm, head down. You're not going to get to know what's going on inside here until I trust you, or, is very, very guarded. And now it's to the point where it's like, that didn't serve me. And so there's a resonation with guys, I think, especially in their 40s, where they're kind of recognizing, okay, last 15 years or so, kids, career, family, relationships, where am I, in that, and what can I do to get better?
Yeah, it's deep. Do you have kids? I don't know if I saw that on your dossier.
I have kids. Nephew and 2 nieces, no kids. Not yet.
Not yet. All right. So still in the cards?
Still in the cards. Yeah.
All right. It's interesting. Like you said, like your surroundings, the people around you. You mentioned that, and I immediately thought about like the people I train with as of today are definitely not the people I thought I would be training with in a sense, but it also makes a ton of sense because we're all dads, and granted we're all different ages. Like I'm 31, the other one's 36 or about to be 36, and the other one's your age, like 43, but like all in a very similar place, yet very different, like, and like there's something about
same but different.
same but different. Exactly. And we, the way that we approach, like, again, like creating like that space, like you said, like that kind of community, the men like coming together, and like, I'm not gonna lie, like this Wednesday, like I already know one of them, like he's 4 days a week, so Wednesday's never on the cards for him. Then I get a message from the other one saying, "Is like I'm not coming today." I was like, shit, I'm about to like grind through today. Good thing I wrote all my stuff down in my notebook to hold myself accountable finally, so I know the numbers I need to hit. But like I was like, like the thing that makes it enjoyable is kind of hearing like, all right, what's been going on in like your workspace? Like, is your problem something that I would actually want to have in a sense, and like hearing that obviously kind of helps like gain that perspective and that knowledge. And I think, like you said, like learning from the mentors, and like there's only so much, right, you can really like absorb through people before you have to go apply it with yourself in order to kind of, I think the right word here is like, in order to like truly understand empathy better, you have to sympathize quite a bit, right? I feel like I need a shared similar kind of pain and experience in a lot of things. Like that's the only way I've ever really learned. Like, just take my word for it. Like, just don't do this. And I was like, nah, I gotta go make that mistake, bro. Like, like, like I know it in my heart of hearts that like, it'll be better for me to feel that, so that I don't make that mistake again, like you said, that was like, you said financial or money, and what was the other one? Money and
food.
Money and food. Yeah. Finances and food. Right. Like, again, like that's where, I mean, Seamus and I talk about, like, they got these 6 pillars now, right? Five of which that like legitimately, like, we're like, yeah, if you have if you look at a wellness wheel, right, there's like usually 6 categories, and the pull and the spread and how to shape it out. And Seamus, the way that you explained that, like the other day, did we do that in a podcast with the wellness wheel, or did we?
We explained it, but like basically that wellness wheel, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you land on a scale of 0 through 10 for each category creates your wheel. And wherever you land, if you roll that wheel, how well does that wheel roll? So if it's less balanced, that means it's rolling like a tumbleweed where it's like flipping and flopping. Or if it's a little bit more balanced, then you can roll it better, right? That was like a PN practice, or I think it was like one of these practices that I did with a personality type. And my wellness wheel was like really good at one part, but on the other side, it was like low. And it would, whenever it did the flip, it was like a flip crash, like a flip. And I was like, it's not balanced. So what you're talking about there is like, trying to make that wheel as balanced as possible so it can roll.
Yeah. And, that inward thinking, like, I mean, it does really help to be outward with a lot of it. Like, to look inward, to be able to be outward with a group of peers is something that I think that I definitely fancy way more. Like, I used to feel like I was introverted, but now I'm very much so extroverted. I can't get anything done if I'm at home. Like, I literally, like, I'm only super productive if I go into the office. And so I put more days in with like people around me, even though we're not even doing the same tasks, and I know I could do it all from home. Like, I'm like, wow, like it's weird how like the energy of other people can make such a big difference. And I think, Yeah, I mean, I think the social being of us has changed a lot, and maybe like you guys probably both feel this way. Like, granted, for me, if I'm gonna go do a zone 2 run, I'm probably not having deep conversations because like I suck at that stuff. So
Hold the phone, Marcos. You can look at my Strava. It says I was zone 4 the whole time we ran 10 miles last week, and that's where I think science sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, it is what it is. It said I was in zone 4 though.
You were talking a
Yeah,
lot, so hey, I mean that added to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were just taking an extra oxygen to get the syllables in. But like, yeah, like the ability to like really overcome a lot of these, issued states again, like takes a lot of. Again, I'm just using my wife as like she's the person that I spend the most time with. So like it's like she's dealing with a gut issue right now, Sean, ironically enough. So like this all comes in the perfect time. So my first question here is like, what is going on in your head? Like what's wrong? Right? What's going on upstairs? Like I need to know that first. And like that's always like the hardest thing to bridge. And I'm like, okay, I'm still trying to work on that. I'm like, look, I can get you the masszymes, I can get you the digestive enzymes, I can give you the hydrochloric acid, the betaine, all the things that are going to help you with like the little bit of indigestion and quote unquote TMI, like let's say it here, her floating poops. I'm like, you become so fixated on the fact that your poop floats from time to time. I guarantee it's probably nothing, maybe it is literally just stress because she like had a little riblet issue and she's like, oh, the pain here. And like my workouts they're not as, I'm not as good. I'm not recovering, whatever. And I'm like, okay, is it that? Is it something else with like balancing, your book and now being busier on 2 days and having to like actually deal with clients, like, for 6 to 8 hours versus 2 to 4, like you did before? Like, what is it? How do we get to the bottom of this, and then be able to like create those like kind of like letdown effects? And it's funny you mentioned kind of like the acupuncture and the massage and all those things. And like all I've been thinking about is like, how are we, not just her, but how are we doing more things in the self-care front? Because everything else we do is grind and go, wake up with the kids and hell, granted, you know what I actually think it is, James, I'm going to say it here. It's because my daughter has been having these episodes, and I don't know if there's someone that's listening and they can chime in and tell me how to fix a 3-year-old having a tantrum at 9:00 at night, and like being like, she needs like literally pinpoint precision of her blanket laying on top of another blanket in order for her to get to sleep. Don't know, but then she freaks out, and then boom, and then literally wifey goes, I'm gonna disown, like she's like, can I give her away? Jokingly, obviously, but can I give her away? And I was like, is that the, like there's some sort of like triggering event? I've been married to with my wife and been around her for probably the last, together we're 7 years. Yeah, 7 years. And then from the perspective of like these instances I've never seen her like crack, it's only happened at these nighttime events here. Like her screaming, and like I was like, this is like uncharacteristic of her. Is this the trigger of like elevated cortisol, which then like leads to digestion? Maybe again, maybe I need to do a better job of getting those other kind of inputs, those things that are going to help with like resting and digesting versus like, being up on level 10 all the time in order to do that. And that might be this here's the thing. Cause I'm like, I doubt that it's like nothing's changed in our diet. Like doubt it's something there, you've always had a little tummy ache if you eat a little too much dairy on pizza night, whatever. But it's super fascinating because like, you mentioned these things. So like, now that we've had a long aside, like what was the biggest thing that you felt like was the catalyst to help you get that kind of like health state in order and then help you kind of really move forward?
As far as like remedy or some type of part of the process or leading up to the desire to get something like figured out?
Man, a little bit of both. Like obviously leading up to it, and then like, do you feel like it was more about the synergy of all things working together, or was it literally just the protocol of like, here you go, here's your gut cleanse, boom?
Yeah, I remember I think if I back up even more, it was after bodybuilding. I was seeing my primary, and I said, I've never had my testosterone checked, but can we get that done? She's like, okay, but let me ask you a few things. How often do you work out? How would you rate your sleep, energy levels? And she, and I gave her some answers. She's like, okay, I just have to tell you from the outside, you don't look like you're struggling with testosterone, and that was interesting because I thought, yeah, like it's amazing what we can construct and how the body gives us this ability or works. I like to think of the body as just like, it's just a yes. It's always like, whatever you're deciding to do, we're going to figure out how to make this work, more or less, right? Like it's so resilient in that regard. Of course, it pushes back and tells us when things are not okay, first, via food or whatever we ingest that may not be good. But I was like, something's wrong. I've never checked my testosterone. So she, ordered the labs. Wasn't even a day later, she called me and was like, okay, I need you to go see this person, endocrinologist. You're at like 1 something. I was like, thank God. Okay. So I went in, started TRT injections. It helped. I mean, I was feeling different for sure. And I was like, okay, this is good. But sleep, nutrition, all of that, no one ever talked to me about that. So 2 years of this went by. And then I'm like, telling my endocrinologist, I'm like, can I get off this stuff? Like, I don't really plan on doing this forever. Like, what's the deal here? He's like, yeah, we'll do tapering processes. We'll see how your body responds. So we did a few of those and they kind of went down again after the tapering. They leveled off and then they never went back up. So we tried it again, tried to taper. Sure enough, same thing every time, drop. So I was like, okay. He's like, there are lifestyle factors you can look into. And he goes, at this point, there's not much else we can do unless you want to stay on it. I was like, I don't. So then I kind of just tabled that. I was like, okay, the energy thing and just feeling off all the time is there. It exists, whatever. I'll just, try to sleep better and work out harder. And those two things, working out has always been my MO and training hard. But sleep and lifestyle factors weren't, and especially nutrition. And then the distended stomach started really coming into play. And I was like, this is weird. I'm waking up with a bloated stomach. I haven't even eaten any food. I have a glass of water and I'm bloated like ridiculously. Like, what is happening? And so that just from, a vanity standpoint had me like all upset. In fact, one guy confronted me because we were on this dog walk a long time ago and I told him about my digestive stuff. He goes, well, I'm kind of glad you said something, man, because I thought for sure you were on steroids because, that's what happens with this distended stomach and these guys that are, big power. I was like, what? Yeah. Like
growth hormone. Yeah. GH gut.
Yeah, exactly.
GH gut, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, no, man, I've never touched the stuff. I never will. So that was the catalyst for me. It was just this really disturbing aesthetic thing I saw in the mirror. I was like, what is happening with my stomach? And it hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. And it just wrecked my psyche and through. And so they're like, yeah, we got to figure out what's going on. Blood work came back normal. I mean, there was deficiencies like most people with vitamin D. I was in Seattle. And probably a host of other things. But then when I do a food allergy test and like 50 things came up, we're like, well, we can't really pinpoint anything because your gut is completely compromised. So we have to walk this really far back. And at that time, that's when the elimination diet came in and was a big tool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's fascinating how much like the protocol for this has not really changed all that much in probably the last decade. Kind of hearing it, like I hear this and I hear the distension, the drinking of water, and my mind immediately goes to like SIBO, right? And my mind is literally like, okay, like ironically enough, like a lot of those other things that are going on from like the cortisol element, like you're mentioning, is like nowadays probably people would probably go look at like a Dutch test and kind of like interpret that and then be able to kind of isolate a few different things and see how you can get the pathways to be better and stuff. And like some of the oh god, what's that? Some of the diagnostics behind things and then lead to the outcomes are a lot better, you know, which is really cool because then
Yeah.
people don't have to like live with however long you dealt with like that distension, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, also too, it like your healthcare provider not giving any other insight, you know, and like going through the TRT channels and being like, I don't really want to do this, and like, okay, yeah, like, you know, like kind of like, I mean, it really, it really makes me appreciate like the nuance that our company, you know, the Seamus and I both work for, Serendipitous, like really goes into. Like, I, again, I just felt like this was just like, I've worked here for so long. I'm like, doesn't everybody do this? And it's like, nah, that's not the type of care a lot of people, you know, get. And it very much so has to have a collaborative approach. You know, there has, and you know, doctors are at the end of the day, like, you know, they're trained in medicine. You know how medicines can interact and help lead to certain outcomes within the body. And then when it comes to like the food and the understanding of like performance, like obviously before we got on here, you guys, like, I thought it was like Seamus is talking about highly branched cyclic dextrin with you. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's so like 10 years ago. Like, you know, but like Sean, you're over here saying like you're feeling better and you hadn't included it before. And I was like, interesting. It's like someone that does this volume of like running training doesn't have simple digesting, you know, high osmolality or high, yeah, whatever it is, like quickly
Low
digesting
osmolarity.
carbs, low
Yeah.
osmolality. There you go. And like, and but again, if no one's ever really gone through that with you and you haven't had the right mentors, of course you're not going to know, you know, for as much
Well,
as
that's
you,
that's the thing, Marcos. I think the quote that I love about this is like kind of like what you were saying earlier about like going down a path. Like you're not
yeah,
going to find anyone that's an expert in something unless they've had that pain deeply. And people know me on this podcast, but like I've had pain everywhere. So like I've broken my body so much that I've had to become an expert in the shoulder, an expert in the knee, an expert in the back, expert in my gut health. So that like when Sean said everything, I was like, oh yeah, I already know like maybe 90% of the answers. Then you just got to try it out. Then we'll plug and play. You know what I'm saying? Just because like the coaches that we have or the people that are the best in what they do have usually been an expert in that pain at some point. You know?
Yep.
yeah. If it's a state where they're like, I really feel like there's probably more people dealing with this, shoot. I mean, you could probably find a Facebook group for whatever that freaking ailment is. Like,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I bet you I could go on Facebook right now and like look up floating poop symptoms, and like next thing you know, there's a 20,000 member group, and I'm like,
Yeah, dude.
here, babe, I'm just gonna pawn this off. I am not an expert in this. These people are gonna be your sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Like, I mean, we become very passionate about the things that we, again, either like made a significant change with ourselves with, and we think that we can give back, and we want to learn more about those things because like it changed our lives. And again, also not to be like a charlatan or like someone that is like saying like this is the only way to get there. You know, we're trying to approach it with like nuance and, you know, be very like tactful and how we approach it. And I think that's like super important. I think like I get that vibe from you, Sean. You're like, you know, there's so many different ways you want to approach things with your people.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's like a sign of a great coach. Like that's something I really strive to do as well. And I like the people that can try to give the nuance, but also are like, hey, like, here's my interpretation, but like, I'm not an expert in here. It's like, I'm an exercise science guy, or I'm a, you know, for me, it's like, I'm a math guy. I'm still learning nutrition and, you know, metabolic processes, and literally understand. I still hardly understand zone 2. You know, people ask me about it, I was like, I really don't know. Like, this is about as much as I know from as a layman.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Deshaun, I mean, honestly, thank you for showcasing every set of your story and how you coach people. And obviously, like, I think the biggest thing men over 40 need to understand, and I mean, I just told Marcos the other day, I almost said I love you to my therapist, because it's like, dude, I've been doing this work that I feel like I'm like letting go of things, and I'm like, yo, what the heck? Like, I'm glad that like people tell me to do this stuff, and I'm just 31, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just starting. You're definitely helping out those folks, but I want to change gears here a little bit since we've been on this topic. But you right now yourself, talking about HBCD, talking about more about the performance side. You know, you went from this to normal, now to normal, to optimization and peak, and also like wanting to be the best. Tell us about your Hyrox and your endurance career, and kind of like what your aspirations and goals are are there now, man.
Yeah. Hybrid is, I know it's kind of becoming an interesting term now, and people are trying to figure out like, what does that really mean? And I'll just quickly say, for me, it's just a combination of two different modalities of fitness that you get to practice side by side and enhance simultaneously. So that could be endurance training, strength training. There's a whole host of things in there. This is a full circle moment for me, because when I mentioned earlier that at 13, fitness was introduced to my lifestyle and my life, it was in that boot camp style format. It was multiple exercises in a circuit, or we had running with weightlifting combined in these awesome conditioning classes that I took as a junior high student.
Yeah.
Hyrox more or less is the same. So 2, maybe 3 years ago, my colleague in Seattle was doing these Hyrox events. Never heard of it. And he and his wife were competing both as individuals and then together, and they killed it. At one point, they were the fastest couple in the world. He was crushing these events. And I was like, geez, and he's in his mid 30s, I believe. So I'm glad, because we're not in the same age division. We don't have to compete, because he's a beast. He's a beast. So I was like, I immediately reached out to him. I'm like, what is this? This looks amazing. He's like, yeah, it's Hyrox and da-da-da. I like signed up right away. Did an event in LA, December of 22. And that was my first event. Didn't have a coach, didn't, just looked at the event and decided like, okay, so there's these stations and you got to run. Okay, I've got a little bit of running background. I've done 3 marathons at the time. So I'm bringing that to the table. This is cool. And then I just simulated the workout and the race, and I split it in half.
Yeah.
And then on Saturdays, I do the whole thing. And I did that for 3 months. And then my first event, I got like an hour 13, finished 5th. And I was pretty ecstatic. My colleague was like, whoa, like, that's pretty amazing. Because I, for the most part, was a bodybuilder. And I say that loosely because I was lifting for size still and just lifting big. That's it.
Yeah.
Wasn't doing anything athletically other than running. And so I was like, I'm hooked. I'm now going to get first in my age division, and I'm going to qualify for Worlds. So it took 2 more events, but I did it. And then I went out to World Championships in Nice this last summer with my girlfriend. We literally had the most incredible vacation. We got to also go into Italy, visit her sister out there. And I was a kid in a candy store. The way that Hyrox is blown up, the money that's involved now, and the production, I felt like a rock star. And I've never been on any kind of stage as far as an athlete. And they ushered us in country by country in front of this huge crowd. And I'm like, what is happening right now? This is amazing. 2,000 athletes out of the 220,000 athletes that competed that year leading up to Worlds events. And from that point on, I'm like, this is a definite part of my business now. I'm seeing how having a goal as specific as this is really helping people like initially just kind of come out and say, okay, I want to try this. Or I sort of consider myself a triathlete or hybrid athlete already. I want to see how well I can do. So I'm kind of serving both of those populations, the beginners and then those that are trying to improve their time. So my goal is to be the best I want to be number 1 in the world at my age division, which is a pretty lofty goal. I experienced some cramping in my quads, in both quads, halfway through the event at Worlds, and it just completely took me out. I ended up finishing, which I was really proud of, but I could have easily got a DNF and took myself out because my legs were barely bending at the knees. I mean, it was pretty atrocious. So now my comeback is I'll go to Dallas in November, and then depending on how that goes, I'm trying to qualify for next year. Yeah,
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sick.
Well, I want to support in that. Like and now we're gonna be training together. Like it's like I decided, guys. Like I'll just be honest with you. Like for about 3 or 4 years there, Marcos knows, but like my fitness journey has not really been what I'd wanted it to be. I was just training and I was just doing what I needed to do. Did some fitness composition, like body comp changes, did some photo shoots and stuff like that. But like that wasn't like the peak that I looked for. For 20 years, I was like competitive in like combat sports, so I wanted to do more of that. But just the way the body is and just the way things are. And, you know, you had your gamut of health issues. I did too, Sean, with skin issues. And I just joint, and I was like, maybe it's time to say bye to this guy. So I did, but then I was kind of like listless and still doing the training, but with not necessarily anything, just getting the habits down. But then I did the Hyrox, and I called Marcos. Marcos is the first one I called. I was like, bro, you can't hide. You cannot hide in a fitness event. Like in jiu-jitsu, I told him, like, in jiu-jitsu, you can hide because, like, you can slow it down. You can have better technique. You can be faster than the guy. Or you could just chill. Honestly, you could just chill. But in a fitness event, you either did it in that time or you didn't. And to this day, I still have to redeem myself because after the sled, I could not breathe. It took me like 2 to 3 rounds to like come back. And I was like, I told Marcus, I was like, there's literally no hiding from if you lifted that weight or if you ran that track. And then the third component, which is what like CrossFit's known for, is putting the time component in. Did you do it in the time that you said you wanted to do? But now that I've been hanging out with Sean, I'm like, yeah, let's get some sessions in. Like I want to like really do the thing now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's again, it's a full circle moment for me, and it allows me. And I remember my girlfriend the night before the World Championship, she said, "What's your goal?" Because she never really asked, and we never talk about it. I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to get first place." I said, "But most importantly, I want to." And we talked about this, Seamus. I want to meet that part of me that says you either don't belong here, or, you know, that loud voice that tries to take you off, right, the path, or, you know, just quit because there's too much pain. And maybe I manifested it, and I got to be careful because I've heard that before in spiritual realms, right? What you say, you got to be careful because it comes out. And sure enough, I met that moment, and I looked at the judge at one point, and I just said, "Hey, I need to make sure if I drop my sandbag, I'm disqualified, right?" And, you know, she finally heard me. She was like, "Yeah." And it was because at that moment I was this close. I was like, I don't want to take another effing step. And I still had 3 stations to go. And so I stood there at the end, had a photo taken in front of the worst time behind me, because they post your time behind you, but the biggest smile on my face, because that fucking time didn't, excuse my language, that time didn't matter. What mattered was that I kept going. And so that's what Hyrox brings out, is that, I'll be honest, I'm like, whoa, I got to shake the dust off here. I'm 43. I haven't like competed at anything in like 10 or 15 years. And now all of a sudden I'm thrust in this arena, and I'm looking around, and guys are like elbowing each other for first place. And it's like, whoa. So it's a lot.
Competitive fitness is by far one of the most unique things, because it's not only you against you, it's you against everybody else, you know, especially if you're all doing the same events in the day. Like, there's nothing that beats it. Especially, I mean, let's be real. Like, sometimes people are not like judging with the harshest criteria. It's really hard to judge movement standards at times. You just got to get over a little bit of that. Like, gripe all you want, you know what I mean? Ride the line of like understanding like what is depth on like the wall ball, which is synonymous to Hyrox and CrossFit, right? And generally one that is commingled. But at the same time, like when Seamus called me, I was like, no shit, he's had the Kool-Aid again. He's found the thing.
I came back, bro. I came back, dude.
Well, but I think too, like, you know, the way Sean, you described it, like, you know, I want to get good at different modalities at the same time. It's really what the hybrid thing is, and your hybrid could be different than my hybrid. And like, you know, I want to keep like, you know, the fact that it's led to a journey for me of like, again, I haven't been running, but then like I signed up for a CrossFit competition. I was like, maybe if I just do like interval running and like slow runs, like versus last time where I just did zone 2 on a bike, I might actually see a better, you know, better utilization case. So like I like kind of reapproaching each one of these yearly competitions for me as like, again, like I know I'm getting a little older, might not be as strong as I was in my early 20s, but and my capacity is definitely not where it is if I don't train CrossFit. But like I like to go into these events and be like, yeah, I don't do CrossFit. Like I go and do like primarily bodybuilding stuff and explosive training and like runs, and I like, you know, I know how to periodize training, you know, best to my knowledge, to be pretty good at like the sport of CrossFit, not just like the health parameter version of it. So, I mean, those things are really cool. It's a really fun experience. It's like you get to have your N of one. There's so much out there. Playing with these little things, understanding like your own volume management, your own load management of the runs, like again, like okay, does it actually make sense to like get prepared for a sprint try that like is a month out before going to it, because then I have to practice those other skill sets even though they don't relate. Who knows? Like, and that's what I have a hard time imagining. Obviously the best way to get at Hyrox is probably literally just do the event, right? Like it is the same thing, so you have to know how it all feels, right? Like they didn't change anything with like the world championships versus like the normal events, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like
right.
a few like there's like rule changes, but as far as the events, no, it's the exact same.
Yeah, there's no like wrinkles that you have to like work out. Maybe there's a slight pitch and elevation on the run. I don't know. Like, but for the most part, like,
yeah, if they ever do decide, I've always wondered that, evolve it. Right now, I think the exponential growth means that if it ain't broke, right? So at the same time, that's the interesting psychological and physical performance component of this. It's the exact same thing, and everybody knows in plenty of time what's coming. CrossFit, you have no clue. And I think that's what's always going to keep CrossFit at that unique, that product and and make it very interesting for the spectator to watch, because you're seeing athletes who are like, even we don't know what's around the corner. And that's pretty exciting and thrilling. With Hyrox, it's a test of who has the best training program and who got the most ready and has the key to unlocking the Hyrox secret, because it's just the same box. But people are finding still to this day, even the Elite 15. I was listening to a guy on social media. He's like, I'm still learning. I don't even know exactly what to program perfectly for everyone. So it's fascinating.
It's the beauty of it, man. It's the wild west again.
Yeah.
It's funny. I told Seamus this, actually. The person who made me run my fastest mile ever is Lauren Weeks. So I'm sure you're familiar with her from
she was in
Hyrox
Elite
World.
15. Yeah.
And
it's awesome.
Yeah, so we did this thing called the Valentine's Day Massacre. 8+ years ago, and like my mom fucking still jokes about like her, like, because we were literally banded together. It was the fastest mile I've probably run like over the age of like 10. She's like, "Were you okay?" I was like, "I got it done, didn't I? I don't care." She was pulling me the whole fucking way. Like I had to still breathe the oxygen and move my legs. So yeah, like you ever want to run a fast mile, run with someone that like literally could be the best in the world, apparently. Like obviously this was before this existed, and it was like uncanny. I was like, yeah, she would be good at all that shit. Like based on training with her, because anything that had a run in it, she'd blow everybody out of the water. And it was like, what was her secret? And I'm like, she would wake. I guess she was like, one of my other clients actually was like her roommate for a while, and talked about her. She'd wake up every morning and just go for a run. I'm like, wow, surprising. Like, who knew that running makes you better at running?
That Matt Fraser, like, I just put a piece of tape around my mouth and did 45 minutes of rowing every day. And I was like, dang, that's like next level.
Yeah, it's and that's, like you just said, the challenge kind of remaining the same, and you getting older, I think, is also a really unique thing, because you're like, if I can still improve, and this is like another year of wear and tear on my body, but I feel better than I did last year. Like the psychological component of that is by far like one of the coolest things. The event that my wife and I are doing in like, what is it, like 3 weeks, basically. It was the first event that I got fucking humbled. Like, and this made me think about like your scenario, Sean, where you're like, I just can't finish. If I drop this bag, I just disqualify. I'm done. But like, what if you did do that? Would you still be hungry to go get it done? Did it help that you actually finished and overcame it? Right? Like, or would you be like, damn, like I just didn't have that grit that day. And that, we went from like a second place finish, a third place finish, to winning the competition, to being off the podium last year. And I'm like, ooh, we gotta reevaluate this. People are getting better, like other people improve. Got to improve the game. Got to improve the goats. These things that are just not not up to par, which is why I'm actually running this year, because there's a little bit of a run that leads into a workout.
Yeah, dude. 1,000 meters, baby.
Hey, it's not far, but that's still like, I got to be prepared just to go. Literally, the running has actually aided like how I feel with on the rower more than actually the rowing I did last year, which was like 400,000 meters in 6 weeks. Like, crazily enough. Like, so I'm like, oh, well, there is a carryover effect. And like you said, no one unlocking the code of Hyrox or whatever your event is, like, I don't know. That's part of the journey. And the journey is, in my eyes, like the thing that ultimately matters more. Like, at the end of the day, I don't even, like, again, 3 years ago, I don't even remember where we were actually placed. Right. So obviously, like, that winning didn't matter that much. What actually matters is, like, I'm going in there with the intention to win. But if we don't, why didn't we? And if we do, okay, like, I can't get complacent, because how do I know next year's event isn't exactly the same? It's not Hyrox and CrossFit, right? They like to throw little wrinkles and be like, are you prepared with this? If there's pistols in it, we're fucked.
Dude, get going on that shit right now.
Yeah, but if this year, I'm like, okay, I sent the workouts to my wife. She's like, all right, I'm in. She was out last year. She's like, I'm done. My competing days are over. And I sent her the workouts this year. She's like, I'm in. I was like, all right, cool. So now what? Like,
well, that's what I told. That's what I told Sean. We did the half marathon and then we did the Hyrox, and I feel so bad because, like, I feel like I let Des down. But I just needed to feel it, dude. Like, I needed to intake information, and that's just always the kind of athlete that I've always been. Like, if I can survive, like, I remember in wrestling, if I could survive the first round with someone, I will win. I know that. And I've had matches that have been double, triple overtime, and I win them. I've won 100% of the matches I've had overtime because I just need information. I'm a slow learner, and, like, I'm a slow applier. So I'm like, so with the Hyrox, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this Hyrox. We got one in December. We'll crush that one. I'm going to redeem myself. Then we have this other one with the team. That's going to be more fun. But I've been to the Hyrox 3 times now. Like, I'm in my head thinking, now I'm hanging out with Sean, who's a damn pro, killer. Now I'm getting these sessions. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to get these sessions in, and then I could start seeing what it would look like to start peaking. Like, I just needed a minute, I just needed a minute.
You want Sean's tutelage, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I need.
It is crazy how much I'm geeking out on this stuff. I've become affiliated with Hyrox, learning their curriculum, but also, taking from my own career, if you will, of what I've learned about strength and conditioning, learning so much about the runner's world and all the things that go into that as far as the journey, the progressions. And I was just talking with a client the other day who was one of his favorite YouTubers. What he was like, do you think he's all natural? He's really big. And I said, I think because hybrid is newer on the scene, you're seeing these guys who have a lot of muscle for their frame. Their FFMI is just like right up there. They're at their peaks, but yet they're moving, and they're moving fast, and they're moving for long distances. And people are scratching their heads like, well, wait a second. I thought a runner looks like this, right? But I always point back to CrossFit. And I'm like, have you seen the world championships? Have you seen those guys' physiques? If you saw them walking down the street, some of them look like bodybuilders. They don't actually look like these wiry endurance athletes or, whatever that is. So I think what they're starting to find is that hypertrophy doesn't completely hinder the endurance athlete, right? Like having, I say that, and then I watch the Tour de France, and these guys have nothing on their frame, and yet they're going up a hill faster than it would take me weeks to get up a hill on a bike like that.
Well, that's a different conversation because we've talked with Nate. We need to get Nate on this podcast, but there comes in physics with that. There comes in, like, your weight comes into play with your bike, and your bike mechanics come into play with that. That's a different.
Sure. Yeah.
That's why I feel like we had a Hyrox pro as well come on here before, Blake, in the younger category, and he said, like, endurance, or how do they say, hybrid athlete, there is no hybrid athlete. Like, that's just a term because your hybrid is different than my hybrid. Like what Marcos was saying was, like, he's just shredded dad that's got to do this CrossFit comp. But there could be a hybrid person that does 5Ks and powerlifting in a year, or there could be a hybrid athlete that does physique but does marathons in a year. It's like there's no specific like
Yeah.
frame, you know?
Yeah, you basically have some sort of strength outcome along with some sort of endurance one.
Yeah.
It's just that you're going to pick the one that like is most interesting to you.
Yeah.
And I think it evolves, and that's the beauty of it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like there's no cap on it, and then you come up with your own challenges. Like I still really want to go
always
after.
progress. You
You
can. You're always progressing. Like if you suck
Exactly.
at 5Ks, but you're great at marathons, all right, you're good there. But then like you could work on the 5K or vice versa. And that's where I'm in right now, Marcos. Where I'm just like, I feel like I'm progressing every.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just progressing every single week because I'm like I'm getting stronger and I'm getting faster. Do my best to stay injury free, you know. So.
I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, it's like you said, there's no defining factor on hybrid. It is, again, it is the uniqueness of like trying to interpret, like, again, these things that take some grit, because endurance events take a different level of like focus and grit and developing a system that is kind of boring, if we're being honest. Like, you know, it's probably better with a friend, you know, doing it like, you know, longer runs with someone else that you can still kind of, ironically, that's how you're supposed to do it, right? You're supposed to kind of have a casual conversation, push the pace. All right, cool. Right. But then also there's like the strength gains, and you're like it'd be really cool to hit this PR or be like back up to that level. It may be like a number that you haven't seen because you've morphed your physique into being, you know, 10% lighter to like also handle the run volumes. Like again, like you're in your head, you're trying to create this best version of yourself that gives you, like you said, athleticism as you deem it as you kind of age. You know, for me, I still want to have the ability like lateral movements and stuff, but like, oh my God, going to do some soccer practice with my son, like I still got a little game, but like the next day I'm hurting. So
What did you do yesterday?
All
It's
that
the worst legs
agility
day.
yeah.
just the quick cuts, and like then also not wearing like cleats, so I don't have like those movements, you know. But like
muscles,
that's the fun of it, you know.
Yeah.
But like that is again our. I mean, this you know again like kind of wrapping this up, like the theme of today is like, you know, these decisions and all the things that go on upstairs are just they're so important for you identifying like what you're going to get out of the world, right? If you can figure out a way to really key in on things that you kind of hold dear, that helps you, again, alleviate those stressors so that like, again, you can do everything right with your training, your nutrition, right? Like, and really paying attention and caring for your body. Like those things are just so dang important. And like, I mean, Seamus, like, I mean, doesn't that really define performance health, right? Like we want to be able to go perform and be healthy all at once. So, you know, take care of the upstairs so your gut works and so that you can go do the performance that you want to do physically.
Yeah,
100%
I mean, any survey I put out, or anytime I've had a call with a potential client, from guys over 40 especially, they're like, yeah, sure, yes, taking my shirt off and feeling proud of my physique is great. I just want to feel better. And that's like through and through the most important part. It's just a different perspective shift at this age where it's like, I want to hang out with my kids. I want to feel good. You know, I want to, and again, and I've said some things online that I guess were controversial because there's a lot of pushback. Well, I like looking big on the beach. And it's like, yeah, it's great. I'm saying there's more to it at this age.
There's layers. There's so many layers. Like, again, I want my outward appearance to project also an inward health that I think, again, I don't need to go as crazy as Brian Johnson with the blueprint, but like I want to be able to identify markers and these things to be in healthy levels. And, you know, again, like fitness to me is like on the continuum. It's preventing, you know, it's preventative from other like all cause mortality diseases, but like performing amidst that is super important, especially for anybody that's been an ex-athlete, you know? So like, again, come on, let's be real. Everybody wants to look like, they want to look good for how they feel good and confident with like a shirt off. It doesn't mean they need to be shredded, right? Like they'll always be in the back of like, I think every male's mind, but like when you feel good, right, you will probably look good, you know, like you gotta feel good first. It's that's the call I'm about to go hop on after this is like, how are we feeling right now? You know? And the next thing you know, he's like, I'm feeling amazing. My workouts are better. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, cool. How you looking? He's like, I haven't lost any weight, but I feel like I'm looking damn good. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want to, you know, care about those things first.
Triangle, right? I call it with like my online group, like of clients I coach. It's like your performance. Well, your physique, your performance, and your productivity. Like it's you gotta find right in the middle where it's like your physique looks good, but you're still athletically performing the way you need to. But remember, you still got a life. Make sure you can go to your work and all that. But Sean, I know we want to be respectful of your time. It's been over an hour. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope the audience resonated. I mean, I have, obviously, because I've been hanging out with you. Now I'm going to be under that tutelage a little bit more and try to get the Shangri-La of amazingness from, Hyrox performance. Where can people find you? How can people work with you? Who can work with you? Is it like Hyrox Pro or just men, or like, what can people do with you? And we'll get all that notes into the details and everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, thank you guys so much for not only your time, but having me on your show. I just really appreciate that. I feel really honored. Love what you guys are doing. So it's just awesome to be a part of that. I am Sean Ferguson is my handle. So that's Instagram. I am Sean Ferguson. And then informedmovement.com. That's a website where for guys, especially who are looking to restart their journey in their 40s or just get things going again. That's where like most of my, I deal with transformation, and then you can reach out to me personally. My email, there's the intake form, my phone number is on there. We can talk about hybrid coaching. I'll start marketing that more on the forefront of like my website so that people can see that, okay, if I want to use him as a hybrid coach, hybrid athlete coach, or Hyrox coach, they can certainly do that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Marcos, anything else, my man?
Nothing from me, man. Sean, thank you again. Super appreciative. Obviously, like you said, taking that plunge into, being an entrepreneur and in fitness, like when you got started, I don't think it was as easy as people trying to do it, in the last like 5 to 10 years, realistically,
Absolutely.
So obviously like that obviously is inspiring to myself and Seamus as we continue to try to, make this podcast passion project into something that actually can continue to like affect people and hear other coaches' stories and how they're handling things and connect people with the right person for the job. Because everybody, needs a little bit of a different sprinkle of things. So hopefully people over there with your informed movement, right? .com, whatever they, informed movement, right? Like
Yes.
whatever you call like your core group of community people, continue to, get after what they're doing. Like you said, while you are maybe geared towards, males in like their 40s, it's obviously not excluding any, particular
Correct.
gender or age, right? Like I think that's also really important for people to understand, like, oh,
Correct.
he only works with that. It's like, no. Like that's not how coaching really works. Like we try to market towards that person because that's like our avatar. So I want people to also know that too. So
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time. And Seamus, we good? I'll say,
yeah.
All right.
Macro perspective peeps, we out.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.